I show 1 minute.
Who's Mike Williams? Oh, I've not seen him. Is he? Um,
I have 9:30.
Okay, I show it to be 9:30 according to all of my timekeepers down here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Western Municipal Water District's regular board meeting today, being June 1st. Holy cow, we're halfway through the year. Can't believe it, right? I mean, just kind of bam, hit us. As a reminder for everyone in our audience today, I know we're getting back into the norm of things, but if you do have a cell phone on you, if you could set that to stun or silent, we would certainly appreciate it so we don't get interrupted in our meeting. And at this time, I will go ahead and ask Madam Secretary if you would go ahead and read in our COVID protocols and take roll call for the board.
Thank you. Good morning. Pursuant to Western Municipal Water District Resolution 3230, in an effort to protect the public health, prevent the spread of COVID-19, and because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing, the public may view this board meeting virtually via Zoom and in person. This meeting is being live streamed at WMWD.com and will be video recorded for on-demand viewing and broadcasting purposes. As stated on the agenda, members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda may make comments in person, virtually via Zoom, or by submitting comments on the district's website. Comments received on the district's website before 4:30 p.m. May 31st, 2022 will be made part of the board meeting record. For those participating in the Zoom virtual meeting who wish to provide public comments, please indicate such by using the raise hand feature, and we will call on you individually. For those participating by telephone who wish to provide public comment, you may do so by pressing *6 to unmute yourself. Phone callers can also press *9 to activate the raise hand feature. If there is more than one caller, you will be identified and called on one at a time. Any public comment will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. However, the presiding officer reserves the right to reduce the amount of time you will be allowed to speak to ensure that all members of the public have an opportunity to provide their comment. I will now take roll call for the meeting. Due to the complexity of conducting this meeting by Zoom and telephonically, I will not be taking roll call for staff members or the public at this time. Director Roten.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Rizvi.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Gardner.
Good morning, I'm present.
Good morning. Director Torres.
Good morning, I'm
Good
here.
morning. President Dinstedt.
Good morning, I'm present.
Thank you. President Dinstedt, you do have a quorum today.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, we'll go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have one of our employees here to lead us today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, hold on. Don't go away yet.
I wasn't planning to.
No, you do not get off that easy. So sorry. Could you please introduce yourself,
I'd be
state
hap-
which department you work for, and how long you've been a Western employee, please?
I'd be happy to do so. Hello and good morning to all of our board members, and hello and good morning to Craig, Tim, Sarah, and council, and to everyone in the room. My name is Latrice Williams. For those who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm in the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Division here at Western, and I've been here for 10 years. Hard to believe, it goes by really quickly. And I was happy to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you
We
for
appreciate
being
it.
here.
Okay. All right, moving right along here, folks. We'll move right into our public comment section. This is for any member of the public who wishes to address this board on any matter which is not currently before us today on our agenda and under the jurisdiction of this agency to be able to act upon. We reserve the right to have 3 minutes. However, we can reduce that time if we have an outstanding number of people that decide that they want to hit us with public comment today. Madam Secretary, is there anybody in the room who has indicated they wish to comment under public comment today?
President Dinstead, I've received no requests to speak today in the room. I see nobody asking to speak on Zoom, and we've received no written comments.
Thank you very much. We will go ahead and move on from public comment on to our presentation portion. Today we have joining us Mr. Jeff Mosier coming from SAPA, which we are a member agency of, to talk about the Weather Modification Pilot Program. Good morning, Mr. Mosier.
Good morning, President Dinstead. It's good to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to present on this. We're kind of in an important place regarding the pilot, so it'll be very useful for the West Municipal Water District board members to be aware of what we're doing. Of course, Director Gardner is our commissioner. President Dinstead is our alternate commissioner. They've heard a lot of this. It's been updated a bit because we are moving through a number of different activities. So the first thing I want to say is, so the weather modification, cloud seeding, right? It gets a lot of questions, gets a lot of interest. That's something that we're very aware of, and we've been working through those and have a little bit of information on what some of the questions are. But this program, SAPA staff was asked to conduct a study of weather modification under the idea of every alternative needs to be looked at, right? And the way I would characterize our member agencies and how they're viewing the pilot and cloud seeding in general is that it's worth a look, right? There's still a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. You need to verify the information, need to validate, what the benefits are. And that's why we're doing the pilot, right? To be able to do that, bring that information back to the commissioners so they can make an informed decision on how we proceed. So I'll jump right into it. I need to say next, right, Spencer? Thank you so much. So these are our member agencies. Again, they all are supportive of moving towards the pilot at this point in terms of how we're defining it. That's what we're moving forward to. I'll give you a little bit more details about the pilot. Next slide. So I want to put this visual up before you to give you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of the pilot. The yellow areas are the 4 regions that we will be conducting this pilot, this cloud seeding. And it's based on a feasibility study that was done. And the blue squares and the yellow squares, this is where the cloud seeding locations will be. We're using a ground-based approach. You can do this from an aerial, from planes, but we're not proposing that. So the pilot is going to be seeding these 4 areas, and then we're going to be documenting the results from those in terms of the pilot. Next. So in terms of, okay, what is cloud seeding? How does it work? Many of you have probably heard of it, but it does sort of fly under the radar, right? No pun intended. But it's the use of silver iodide. And the idea is that ice and snow, they form on particles that are up in the clouds. That's how snow forms now, but it's usually based on dust, right? Dirt particles, particulates, other things that are in the cloud. So we're seeding the cloud with additional particles through silver iodide, and through that we'll increase the amount of snowfall and the amount of rain, particularly, and we're targeting the mountain regions, so it falls at snowpack. And so that's the idea of cloud seeding and what we're proposing. So the physics are well known, right, in terms of does it work? Yes, it works in a laboratory. It does work up in clouds. The question is, does it work for our region? Because it's based on topography, the weather patterns, and so that's part of what the pilot's going to be looking at. Started in the 40s. There were some challenges. At the time, it was oversold. There was limited science. So as a result of that, there were misconceptions resulting cloud seeding. Those remain today in terms of how people think about it, like it's a black box. There have been a lot of recent advances in terms of weather forecasting, in terms of operating the cloud seeding program. Computing and modeling have had a lot of advances. The seeding methods, And this is important because we need these validation studies in order to validate that cloud seeding works, because you cannot measure the benefits directly, right? You cloud seed, it snows, and people will say, well, it snowed anyway, right? Where was the benefit? So that's the challenge, and I'll go through what we're going to do on that. Next. Okay, so why do we consider cloud seeding in the Santa Ana River watershed? You know all these issues in terms of precipitation and river flows have been trending down, right? So cloud seeding would help increase that precipitation. It's a local supply, has the potential to reduce imported water. What's nice about cloud seeding, it works in dry years and in wet years, and that helps with droughts. Of course, in dry years, we have fewer storms to seed, but you still have the benefit of cloud seeding on those less frequent storms. It's cost effective, and I'll go over the numbers, but frankly, it has to be because of the uncertainty associated with cloud seeding. It can't be an expensive option based on that. And it supports local water storage. That's important for SAPA. It's important to our member agencies, including Western. There would be natural infiltration, but it also takes advantage of existing stormwater capture infrastructure. Next. All right, some background in just terms of cloud seeding in the United States. There are a number of applications. Power utilities look at cloud seeding a lot. So if they could put more snow up in the mountains and then use that for hydropower, that provides them a lot of revenue in terms of what's generated. Ski areas love it, right? No questions there. But also water resources agencies and irrigation districts. In California, there are 16 projects. That was more than I thought, that I understood. Santa Barbara has a long-standing, multi-decade project. I have some information on that. San Luis Obispo just started a project. And the Sacramento Municipal Water District is really for power supply. They've been doing it since 1968. So how does our California Department of Water Resources think about cloud seeding? So they are encouraging. So they say that cloud seeding is a safe and effective means of augmenting local water supplies. Of course, every local area sort of has to figure out if it works for them. Next. So here's just a couple case studies. So there's the Colorado River Basin Augmentation Program. It's been around since 2006. There's 40 partners. MET is a partner in that. And they cloud seed the Colorado River system, and it provides benefits on a local, regional, and system-wide benefits. Next. So the particular program that I have information on, and there's several of them, you can tell by the green dots. So the Central Colorado Mountains River Basins Program, they just published a report for last winter. They seeded 32 storms. They estimated an increase of 9% increase in precipitation. That resulted in an additional 100,000 acre feet increase in runoff. And that cost for them was about $3 an acre foot. Of course, this is probably one of the best programs, just the way it's set up from a geography point of view. Ours isn't that cheap, but I have the numbers. But it's very successful. It goes on year to year. Next. So the Santa Barbara County Water Authority, they've been cloud seeding since 1981. It's a coalition of 11 cities and water districts. They have 2 target areas. They have these ground seeding stations. They're in blue that are in the map. And then if you hit next for me again, Spencer. So the results of 24 seasons for the 2 areas, there's a 9% increase estimate and a 19 to 21% increase estimate. And what's useful about this information, it's based on so many years, 24. So they're a big supporter of cloud seeding, and it's continuing there. Next. So these are the cloud seeding facilities, just to show you what they look like. They're not extensive. They are ground-based. They create a flare that gets the silver iodide in the air. Convection currents take it up the mountain ranges to seed the storms in the region. So it's not a lot of equipment, and that's one reason why it's cost-effective. Next slide. So I want to show you this slide. It came from the feasibility study, and it's the results of the modeling we did of the dispersion. Now, the blue and green that you see, that is actually where the silver iodide goes. But the idea here is this is where the additional precipitation would occur, whether it's snow or rain. So we are targeting these mountain regions. This gives you a good visual on how the cloud seeding would actually be run when it's operated. Next slide. So we did a feasibility study, which completed in 2020. The finding was that it's economically and technically feasible. As a result of that, it suggested that we do a pilot to verify them. Next. And so the results that the feasibility came up with was, in terms of benefits, there'd be additional 8,200 acre feet of stream flow, and that would be an increase of 8%, and that's typical for a lot of systems, between 5 and 15% increase for cloud seeding, and the cost per acre foot is about $45 an acre foot. Again, it sort of has to be cost effective in order for people to get behind it because of the uncertainty. Next slide. All right, so what's the purpose of our pilot program? There's really three things we're trying to do. One, we need to do the cloud seeding operations to understand how they work, how to use them for our area. But second, and this was a direct recommendation from the commission, was we need to validate the benefits. So we have an independent research firm that's going to do the validation for us. And I'll talk about how that's done. And then the question we got from Water Agency is, okay, where does this water go? So we're going to use existing surface water models based on the increased in stream flow to show that all the water stays in the watershed. In other words, it doesn't get to the ocean, but also a bit about where it goes. So that's going to be important for agencies to get behind in terms of what the benefits are. Next slide. Oh, and again, just as a reminder, the information for this is needed by the commission because they're going to have to make a policy decision, right? At the end of the day, after the pilot, on whether we would continue with the program, can you justify it as a priority for us? Because there will be a cost associated with it. Next. All right, so there's a lot of questions regarding cloud seeding, safety of silver iodide, who operates this, is there liability associated with that, how it's operated, it'll be operated during the winter months. Suspension criteria are critical. There's certain clouds we won't seed because they're not favorable for it, but we also need to turn it off during heavy storm events, atmospheric rivers. We don't want to flood or contribute to flooding in the region. And there's also potential for burn scars, and we don't want to necessarily increase the rainfall in those areas. So there'll be the suspension criteria part of an operations plan. Permitting is fairly straightforward, and we've been able to work through that. Next. All right. So the other thing we get from the commissioners is, okay, you got to go out and talk to people for a couple of reasons. One, to raise awareness, but the commissioners also suggested that it would be useful to find out if they would support this financially, and they have, and I have a slide on that. But in terms of the outreach, we've talked with Water Agency throughout the watershed. We've made over 45 presentations. We've talked to tribes in the region. That was very important for us. We've done a disadvantaged community initiative at SAPA, and we understand that we need to hear those voices in terms of planning. And the tribes are favorable and supportive, so that was great to hear. Regulatory agencies we've reached out to, the regional board is supportive. Adjoining watersheds, they sort of need to know about this. We've talked to Mojave Water Agency, we're reaching out to others. We've talked to ski resorts, and no surprise, right there, they're very supportive. They'd like to see this done. Next. All right, so the validation of the results is critical for the pilot program. And this was a requirement from the commission. It's going to be independent. We've selected Desert Research Institute to do this. They've done a lot of studies with cloud seeding. So how will this work? So we're going to have target areas, which is the 4 in yellow, and then control areas. And then we're going to compare the two. It's not a direct measurement. It's indirect. But this process has been done by others, and it's possible to be able to get a good estimate based on that. And it will give us this estimate of additional seeded precipitation and runoff. If you hit next, these are the 4 target areas. So those are the areas that we're seeding. Next again, Spencer. And so the control areas will be, probably will be the San Gabriel Mountains, right to the west. It's nearby. And you can also use Coastal City. And then there's a relationship between how much rain are in the control areas that you compare to the target, and that's your ability to be able to estimate the additional precipitation. Next. Okay, in terms of funding, all right, where is the money going to come from, right? So we've submitting, or in the process of submitting, a grant for Prop 1 Round 2 from the state, and that will cover 50% of the cost. That's important to the commission that we're able to get a grant for this. So there will be a local cost share of the other 50%. So that would be SAPA member agencies. And I have a slide at the end in terms of the budget. but also other agencies in the watershed who have interest in this. So we have, I forget the number here, 7 or 8 agencies that are contributing funding for this, totaling $94,000. That's very useful because it shows that there's interest in the watershed to do this. Next. And one thing we're focusing on at SAPA, what are the key success factors for this program? So one is, and we've heard this from member agencies and others, SAPA has to be objective and we have to be trusted in terms of the information we provide, because if we're not transparent, people don't understand it, there's going to be questions that they're going to have. We have to secure this grant. We're in the process of doing that. It's very likely we'll do that. Then this validation approach. So cloud seeding can't be looked at as a standard engineering project, right? In terms of, buying imported water, right? You spend the money, you get the water. It doesn't work quite like that. Here we invest in a process, and then we need a system to be able to demonstrate that there are some benefits from that. So that's what the validation approach will do. And the outreach and engagement, there could be public opposition to this type of program, right? We've already had one article on the front page of the Riverside Press-Dispatch, right? So the media could have interest. And so it's not just water agencies, but the public themselves could get a hold of this and have lots of questions. We have to be prepared to address that. Next slide. All right, so the last 2 slides are the budget and the schedule. So here's the budget by year. It's a 4-year program. We need 4 years to be able to have some confidence in the validation approach. The very bottom 2 numbers, the total pilot cost is going to be about $1.5 million. The share for SAPA, if you subtract out the grant and the local agency, is $645,000. If you hit next, so here's how it breaks out per year and per agency. So the total cost, again, after subtracting the grant and the local share, is $645,000 for SAPA. The agency cost for all 4 years divided by the 5 agencies is $129,000, and so the agency cost per year would be about $32,250. So that's how it breaks down in terms of cost to our member agencies, taking into consideration the grant and other support we have. And then the last slide is the schedule, and this is important because we are trying to start the cloud seeding this November. And one reason for that is the current drought, right? So there's interest in us being able to get this up and running. It's a bit of a tight schedule. We think we can do it. So if you hit next for me, Spencer. So the commission is going to have to make a couple decisions in June in order to meet this schedule. So in order for the pilot program to start November 15th, we have to get an operations consultant on board. The commission is going to be reviewing an RFP at their meeting next week on June 7th. And if you hit next for me one more time, they're also going to be doing a review of the CEQA on the June 21st meeting. So the commission is going to review the information. They'll have to approve these things in order for us to make this November 2022 start date. If for some reason there could be off-ramps here, if we don't meet certain things, then we would start the cloud seeding in November of 2023. So that's where we are in the schedule. The commission is going to be asked to look at a couple things. So this is very useful timing to get in front of your board and give you this information so you understand where we are. And so if you hit next for me, Spencer, I think that's it. So President Denstadt, I'm happy to answer any questions if there's time.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I'm sure we do have some questions. I know I have questions. Looking for questions. Director Isby.
So the CEQA is done, or it's going to be presented in front of the commission, or it's being done right now?
It's completed.
It's completed.
So we've had our public workshops. It was drafted, it's finalized, and now it needs to be adopted by the commission.
Okay.
And just a little bit of information there. CEQA was not required for cloud seeding, but as a public agency, this is something that's important to us that we invested in getting done.
Okay. So what if they come up with changes in CEQA and required more things, so that pushes the project?
So
into?
that's a good question, and I've asked our project team about this, and the CEQA did not come up with any fatal flaws, and it didn't come up, well, anything that, that they thought needed to be done, we're doing, right? So there's no outstanding questions as a result of CEQA. Of course, we'll see what the commission says, right?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Director Roughton?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. First of all, this just totally intrigues me. When we very first heard about it from Director Gardner, I was like, oh my gosh, this is out of the box. I think of things like when electricity was invented, it's, I mean, you just never know. There's a lot of possibilities. It was interesting to see that there are already cloud seeding projects in other areas. I didn't realize that either. Just two, I think, maybe three questions. So I'm not a scientist, and I'm looking at this silver iodide and then mixed with acetone.
Yeah.
How does that work in the environment? I mean, acetone's I don't know what silver iodide is,
Great
but
question.
acetone is, a strong chemical.
Right. So the acetone, and you, some of you know, Director Torres, you're probably familiar with acetone, but it's very volatile, right? And so it evaporates. And the reason why it's used, it's part of the mixture with the silver iodide when you use the flare to get it into the air. It's not a rocket or anything like that, but it just gets up in the air. The acetone, based on studies and how they've implemented it, is very useful as part of that process. So acetone is used, so it burns when the flare is set off. And you end up with water and carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, right, it's a greenhouse gas, but the amount of carbon dioxide it produces, and we're talking silver iodide in very low levels, and the amount of carbon dioxide is minuscule. And that was looked at as part of CEQA. So the acetone itself is, through combustion, is broken down to water and carbon dioxide. The silver iodide's a great question. It's a question we had as staff, because we never worked with silver iodide before. It is inert, right? So it doesn't break down into silver and iodide. So it's a particle. And when you think of the particles, it's not one atom of silver iodide. It's several atoms making up a particle. It's very inert, so it ends up not degrading in the environment, so it stays as silver iodide. You can do studies where they've been cloud seeding, and these studies have been done, to look at the amount of, quote, silver that's in the, let's say, the soil, and you cannot see an increase over background. And that has to do with so little silver iodide is actually put in the air as part of these programs, it doesn't raise it above background levels of silver, and I'm talking about silver, not silver iodide. The analytical method for silver is a lot easier, right? The metals. So you don't see an increase of that silver either in the soil. It doesn't dissociate in water, so if it gets into a stream, it doesn't dissociate. It'll probably end up in the sediment, but again, it's very, very low levels.
It's like a salt, so it's literally like table salt. So just like your table, just like the ocean, the table salt, when you put it in your water, it's not going to break up, and then you're not going to be full of sodium and or potassium or whatever it is that it will stay as a compound. That's how strong it is.
Okay, and so is the acetone kind of what helps to get it up into the air?
Correct.
So,
Right.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, I think I just had one other, looking at the slide that has the pictures
Yes.
of the two apparatus, about how tall are those? I was curious, it's kind of hard to get a,
Oh, that's a good question.
Scale.
I've never been with one, so that's actually, I probably need to go
Oh.
see one. But just based on judging from, the photos and the information I have, I would say maybe 10 feet max. They're probably more
Okay.
like 8 feet tall.
okay. And then we're going to be using both of those? Is there an advantage
Yeah.
of one, or you're just testing both, or
Yeah, it's a
what?
good question. So the cloud nuclei generators, the one on the right, these are the ones that are used mostly and the ones that we would use. And it works for our topography for 3 of the 4 target areas.
Okay.
The Cleveland National Forest, it's a lower elevation, and so we need a more effective way of getting the silver iodide into the cloud system. So we want to use the AHOGs for those. That's automated high output ground seeding. So because of the topography, we need to use those to cloud seed in Orange County. But the CNGs we're using throughout the rest of the upper watershed.
Okay.
We could
Awesome.
use the AHOGs, they're more expensive, and they could be automated. So if some agencies who are going to be running, one of the questions is who's going to be running these things? So we have sponsors like Eastern Municipal Water District, they're going to be operating 2, and we have most of them run by agencies in the watershed through agreements. They may prefer the automated versions. We may do AHOGs there, so that's one advantage of the AHOGs that can be done remotely.
Okay, so SAPA isn't going to run these, the separate agencies are?
Correct. So we're going to have an operator who's going to manage the cloud seeding operations. So they're going to install these, they're going to get them set up. But, with 15 of these throughout the watershed, it's much more effective. I mean, they're not going to have 15 themselves. They're not going to have 15 operators running around. So if we can put these at certain locations where we have water agency operators on staff 24/7, they would work with us in turning them on and off.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. I think my only other question was, so this is listed as a pilot program. Is that
Yes.
because it's sort of enclosed in that 4-year trial, and then it'll all be evaluated after that to see whether to make it more of a permanent program?
That's absolutely right. And so if the question today was, do we go into a permanent cloud seeding program? I don't think there'd be support for that. And that's the idea that people think it's worth a look, but they're not necessarily convinced that this will work for us.
Yeah.
And so they want that information from, quote, a pilot, just like if you're going to do a technology pilot, you run it for a year or 6 months, you get the information, see if it works for you.
Sure.
So this is the equivalent.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
This is
Thank you for the
very
questions.
interesting.
Okay. Director Torres, Director Gardner.
Jeff, a couple of comments and questions. My recollection of discussion of the technology is, and you mentioned that dust can be a particle that water condenses on and creates rain or snow. But I believe that most dust in our area does not get to very high altitude very often, and it tends to settle out. And the advantage of silver iodide is you can get these particles to higher levels where rain and snow will form, and it stays there until it's actually becomes the nucleus of a water droplet or a snowflake.
Right. That's a great comment, Director Gardner. So yes, the silver iodide has been engineered for this purpose, right? It was selected specifically because of its ability to through convective currents of a storm, to be taken up into the clouds. So I'm not an atmospheric scientist, so I don't know as much about the dust particles or the dirt particles, but you're probably right. They weren't designed for this. They just, some of them do get up in the atmosphere and they do form, but the silver iodide is engineered for this.
We're not short of particulate matter in this area. But much of it does not get to the elevation that we need it. Much of it isn't actually formed or carried around during storms. It tends to be different weather patterns when our natural particulate level, or man-made for that matter, is higher. I think you had a slide that showed the local financial support.
Yes.
I think that's important. There've been a couple of recent additions. One of them is Big Bear Municipal Water District.
Right.
And they're in terrible shape with the drought, because there is no way to get water up the hill except to have it fall out of the sky. So they're a small agency, and they put in $20,000, which I thought was pretty significant. The reason for the flare, we didn't really talk about it directly, but the reason for the flare is it creates the heat that carries the particles up into the atmosphere. That's the sole purpose of the flare, is to make heat to carry the particles up. I think this is, I have my own doubts, both from experience and, you know, used to work for Edison. Edison had a cloud seeding program in the Eastern Sierra for years and abandoned it. But particularly with our need for additional water sources, I think it's important that we go forward with this project, WISAPA. No. This is a presentation day. We're not voting yes or no. But I did think it was important the presentation come to our board, because over the 4 years, we're looking at a little over $120,000 expenditure of Western funds, our ratepayers' funds. I think because it's a 4-year study, because of the validation that goes with it, solid data will come out of it that will guide future steps, and, you know, whatever they are. You know, it doesn't work, we're not going to do any more of it, or it works well, we can pinpoint these, we can add more areas. In my mind, from what I know today, I am likely at SAPA to vote to support it. But I do think it's important that we understand how it works. I have some doubts about the cost numbers in terms of acre feet or dollars per acre foot. That's a projection of stream flow. Stream flow doesn't necessarily, we don't know how much stream flow actually goes to our customers. And, you know, you can't trace a drop of water from point A to point B. So I don't know that it is as cost-effective as the numbers that have been presented really are, but we'll be able to help document that. And compared to some of the other alternatives that the state is looking at, I do believe that this may be cost-effective if it actually works. And we won't really know if it's going to work until we do something like this project. I think of it more as a demonstration project than a pilot, but they're really the same thing. So this project, if it goes forward, will show us if the technology works in this climate, in this topography, and I think it's probably going to be worth us doing it. But so those are my thoughts. Sure.
Director Torres?
I'll follow after you, because you might be able to answer some.
So this has been heartburn for me for a while, this project, because we don't have assurances, right? And there's a lot of money that's been, I mean, that's no surprise to you. Couple of questions for you moving forward on this, because I have seen a number of presentations and was sitting on the commission when this originally came around, and then switched seats with Director Gardner. So public outreach, you said you're continuing to do public outreach. My question is, are you targeting that public outreach to those areas that may actually be closer to the sites where you're going to be establishing your, you know, the number of locations that you had on the map? Are you targeting those? Thank you, Spencer. You're just right on it. You're right on it. You could flip through that faster than I can on the packet. So my question is, are you doing any specific target outreach for these types of locations in these specific areas?
So the short answer is we haven't considered that yet. So it's a great idea, right? I think it's something we can incorporate to what we do, particularly if, the public finds out or realizes that these are the locations of the facilities. So I think we should incorporate that, but that's something we hadn't considered yet.
Okay. And I'm only speaking from experience because I've had some experience similar to Director Gardner. A number of years ago down in Marietta, there was some real pushback over talks about some of this going on and their concerns of being up on the plateau and seeing this being shot up into the sky. So, just some considerations, and we've at least had a little pushback from one of our member agencies that have expressed concern over this program. So we need to address those concerns because they obviously represent some customers directly too.
Right.
And want to make sure that we're bringing those concerns to you so that you can address them appropriately. So that's one thing. Let's move to my question on the budget. As far as the grant funding is concerned, what is your timing looking at for doing the grant award? Because you're kind of, not all the eggs are in the basket yet. So I'm kind of curious because your fee estimate is with the grant consideration, correct? Not without it.
That is correct.
So the numbers would adjust up if that grant wasn't awarded. So what are we looking at with the timing on the grant?
Right. So the grant process, and SOP administers the grant process for our region. We're the IRW agency. So, they're submitted as of today, June 1, and it's going through the SOPA process for the next, 4 or 5 months. And then we would submit to DWR our recommendations. We assume it will get through our process. Once it goes to DWR, they would make a determination in early 2023. So you're absolutely right. We would be at some risk, right, for starting the program in November 2022, because we will not have award until early 2023, and then we have to go through a contract, right, with them, and that takes several months. So presumably, we would not have the grant funding in place until, the second year of operation. That being said, the funding that we would spend in that first year would count towards the cost share. And so it would just be, we would cover more of the upfront cost, and the grant would still be used for the years 2 through 4. But it is a question. It is a bit of a risk. We're very confident. If you think of SOPA's track record in terms of getting these types of regional projects through that we sponsor. I mean, I don't know of any that's never gone through by DWR. We've talked with DWR. They're very supportive of cloud seeding. So it would surprise me, would be really surprised if for some reason they said no. And to be honest with you, they usually agree to all our recommendations. They usually don't take projects off. So it'd be very unlikely that DWR would not select it.
Right. And I'm not questioning the track record at all because I've seen SOP and I've sat on that commission for a number of years and I've watched all of the grant funding that comes out of that and essentially the clearinghouse, right? So for the region. But we also know that the state isn't lightning fast.
Yeah.
So my question is the parameters that come out in the grant proposal and what you're submitting, does the criteria, is it going to include the years that would already be done?
That's right.
So,
Yeah, we've already looked into that, and the first year, like if we paid for all of it ourselves the first year, right, based on not having the grant, that would count towards the 50/50 cost share.
okay. And as far as the partners are concerned, do you have any idea, and maybe this is a kind of an off-the-wall question, but in terms of the watershed and the nexus of benefit area that we're looking at and projections and modeling and things that you've done, and especially in the feasibility study and all of the things going on here, do you know what the number is of the water agencies that would be of benefit to
great
receiving
question.
those types of things?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I'll say is, are there water rights associated with the additional water, right? And there isn't. It's just considered natural water supply as if it rained, naturally, right? So it just goes into our current system. That being said, the third part of the pilot is to conduct this surface water flow modeling to say, okay, if there was this additional acre feet, where did it end up? Where's the benefit in the watershed? Now, one question is, we're not going to seed any storm where the water goes to the ocean. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So we would want this surface water flow model to verify that the storms we seeded that are not atmospheric rivers, that all that water stayed, in the 3 target areas in the upper watershed, that all that water stayed in the upper watershed, all right? We're not going to be able to account for every drop. But when you think about the benefits of this additional water, first, it's going to be increasing soil moisture in the mountains. And that's going to help in terms of if there's, the next storm or the next year there's storms, if the soil moisture is higher in the soil, the water's not going to absorb into the soil like we see in, the Sierras and other places, but that water is going to flow down and can be captured by, infiltration. So there's benefits in terms of soil moisture, there's benefits in terms of, additional water for habitat and the environment. But the question of who benefits from that additional acre feet, or where does it go? We hope that this surface water flow will help us understand that. Because one of the questions we've heard is, say this goes to a more regular program after 4 years, how do you figure out who pays for it? Right? If some agency gets no benefit from it, then, would they pay? So, those are things that the modeling of where the water goes is going to help us figure out. And, the good news here is because we're doing 4 years, we're going to be able to do the analysis of modeling after year 1, right? We're going to get some information, and then we may be able to change that as part of year 2. It's like, listen, we missed this, we didn't understand that, and we can tweak that modeling effort for each year to try to make sure we understand that better. And you'll get interim results, right? You'll get results after the first year to be able to look over.
Well, I mean, my curiosity's sake is from okay, so I see the number of agencies that you have that have committed a dollar amount, but how many have not that may be in the benefit area that are going to receive this, hey, these other guys did all this stuff and we reaped the benefits of it, and
Right.
it doesn't come back to the member agencies or the people that have put the cost share in. So
Yes.
I'm just kind of curious how you're outreaching those individual agencies and how many are there? I mean, because collectively, I don't think this is a very big number for what the region represents, water
I agree.
agency-wise.
We agree. So, President Enstat, to be honest with you, the vast majority of agencies that we have talked to love the idea that you and our other member agencies
it.
are going to fund this. They're like, yeah, we're behind them funding it.
Yeah, no, but, and that's my point is, how are we going to continue to do the outreach to those folks to do the buy-in? Because if you're reaping the rewards of the program, then you should foot some of the cost as well. And how is that going to be allocated in terms of,
Right.
the benefit offset that they receive for agencies? Because we may not have a direct benefit, just like Mike was saying, we have a hard time doing it and transferring it down and following it through the blue streams to be a direct benefit to our customers versus somebody else's customers, that it's fallen right into their basins, doing a ground recharge directly for them that they're pumping out of, and we don't have that same benefit for our customers. So I just want to make sure that what we're paying for actually has a nexus of benefit for the customers, which is what we're all about, and that's what we're doing. So, just kind of.
We agree,
Just kind of
100%.
where I'm going with this.
Right.
And my question too is, fundamentally for a board consideration is, while incrementally, if the grant money is funded into this and we get other participation, our incremental share goes down, which, may be an okay thing. But then the question comes back to, okay, so what else could we do with the money? And what else could be of an actual not throwing of the dice
Right.
crapshoot and be a direct benefit to our organization and to our customers, and how does that play out? So those are kind of the scales that I weigh when I go, because how do I then associate, we have this gully washer, well, how did we know that the gully washer wasn't going to come anyways?
Right, right. And this is what the validation component is all about. It's not going to be perfect.
Right.
But it should give us what I call a weight of evidence approach, that there is a benefit. And it's, 5%, 10%, 15%. And it'll be plus or minus. It's the other thing is we'll give you error bounds
Right.
around those estimates. Is it 10% plus or minus 5%? We've talked with our, Desert Research Institute, and that will be part of what it's provided.
Okay, and then one final concern that I have, and this is not something new to you, was the fundamental discussion that we had in relationship to liability.
Yes.
And so, looking at this lovely map of the watershed, living in Southern California, being in the middle of drought, being in dry vegetation, and being in a burn cycle that no longer has a start and end to the season, because it is a year-round cycle now, we have a number of burn scars in the area. And my concern is, okay, so said homeowner lives in the burn area, we get the gully washer, it ends up being a flood, it ends up doing damage to their house, so who are they going to sue? And that's kind of my concern for a runoff perspective in an unintended area, because we can't exactly control
Right.
the clouds and where they decide to go, and we have no idea what this fire season is going to bring to us, right? And please, everybody, knock on wood, it's inevitable, right? We just don't know when or where.
How long?
And it's gonna, and how big it's gonna be, right? Because we've had hundreds of thousands of acres burned in Southern California over the last several years. So that is a concern of mine as to locationing and how we're assessing that and where the rainfall might drop. Because even if you're looking at snowpack in some of the mountains, you're looking at the Apple Fire, you're looking at some of the stuff that happened up at Glen Oaks and Yucaipa in some of those areas that are targeted, that are part of that burn scar, that are still in recovery and will be for years.
Right.
Because we've not had a nice rainfall to even encourage vegetation to come back to hold the hillsides up. So just to kind of perspective in looking at that, the liability sake of it, and what we're looking at. So I don't know how you guys are going to address that as far as public outreach, if that happens, or if the unfortunate incident happens,
Right. So the operators have liability insurance. And the suspension criteria, President Denstadt, that's going to be critical to operating this. And that's part of the pilot, right, is understanding what those suspension criteria should be.
Right.
But those are excellent observations.
Now, and my concern would be to Director Gardner trying to move forward on this thing is to do it, I guess. I mean, yeah, all things given, if we're living in a wish world, yes, we should be looking for any alternative we possibly can for alternative water supply. I get that. We're in a drought. I get that. We need to do what's best for the customer and to decide where our dollars are best spent. And I would say that, a contingency should be on whether or not the grant funding is actually awarded, to continue with the program and our funding commitment, and whether or not we're seeing any kind of results after the first year, what that actually shakes out to be. And then, obviously, I would never stop going after partner agencies, even if they're small incremental dollar amounts. At least they've got a stake in the game.
Agreed.
At least they've got to have something in it, and they're having to message, and they're having to financially commit, and they're having to be a partner in what is supposed to be a region-wide watershed benefit.
Right.
So just kind of my concerns, and then obviously some public outreach on the site locations would be of paramount importance.
That's helpful, yeah.
And to talk to and have some communications with some agencies that are having a little bit more pushback from the retail side of it and the customer to make sure that concerns are being addressed appropriately so that we don't have some big, huge thing that boils over
Right.
and turns into something that we didn't intend it to be. So those are just kind of my
Okay.
my comments moving forward for consideration and for thought. And appreciate you being here.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, President Dessa, those were great questions. Really, really good questions. I have a ton of questions. I have a ton of questions and comments, but first of all, I just want to say you gave such a great presentation for not being an atmospheric professional. So, thank you for being here. I have like just very basic chemistry questions.
Sure.
The first one being, silver iodide is an EPA priority pollutant. You're going to end up seeing it in the sediment and other places. How are you going to avoid those EPA regulation
The
issues?
silver is a priority pollutant, but I don't,
I looked it up. Silver iodide is a Clean Water Act priority pollutant. I checked just because I don't have them all memorized, but
sure, I understand.
yeah. Have you thought about the mitigation that is going to come?
So
Because CEQA wouldn't actually address that.
Well, what CEQA did, it
Okay.
looked at if there was a potential, or what the level of impact would be.
Sure.
And they concluded, based on what others have done and the research and studies out there, that there's not a significant enough of an impact, even after 10, 20 years. And this goes to the amount that, amount of silver iodide you actually put into the air. Yeah. If you added up all the hours that the units would be running, it's on the order of like 30 hours a season.
Okay.
And the amount of silver iodide in terms of particulates is the equivalent of one truck on our roads for a year. So it's not, in terms of the amount of silver iodide, it's not a tremendous amount. And so the CEQA, looking at that and what others have done, came to the conclusion that there's not an ecological or biological impact for doing it in such a limited way.
Okay. And I have, my own PTSD from regional boards and state boards saying, hey, do something. Guess what? Now you're going to have to, we're going to throw a TMDL on it, right? So
Right.
that was mostly my question. And then during the CEQA process and the public comment process, what were some of the comments received when it came to the environmental concerns?
So, it's an interesting question. We didn't get a lot of comments public comments as part of CEQA, and we attribute that to a lot of the outreach we had done.
Okay.
So, most of the comments you get on CEQA are from other, agencies that might be impacted, right? And we've talked with them, flood control districts, water agencies, and so I think that they didn't have, that a lot of their questions were answered before CEQA. Right? And so when CEQA came around, they didn't really take the time to add any more additional comments. So I think there was a benefit of the outreach and addressing their comments one-on-one. And you may know this, Director Torres, but when you think of CEQA, when I work with CEQA firms, they always talk about, well, what else are you going to do? Like there's the public workshops, but they call it enhanced outreach as part of CEQA. And so that's what we were doing, and our CEQA consultant, they were excellent. They have done CEQA on these type of projects in California. They were very impressed with us going out, talking to so many water agencies and having public information out there and having a web page. They thought that was very helpful. But so in terms of actual CEQA, it was just a minor comments.
So I think that's good. So I know with, SB 1000, EJ communities and EJ groups need to be consulted. What environmental groups or EJ groups were consulted when going through this?
So that's an excellent question. So I've only been at SAPA for about 1 year and 4 months.
Oh.
So I don't have the benefit of all the work that.
It's like Director Gardner.
Right. I don't have the benefit of all the work they've done
Okay.
in terms of our One Watershed, One Water, One Watershed program.
Sure.
And we did this disadvantaged community initiative, and that's something else that, you know, I think it's very useful that SAPA did this. You know, it's a priority for the state, and we got a $3.5 million grant. We finished it last year. And through that program, we made a lot of contacts with community organizations throughout the watershed, okay? And so as part of CEQA, and again, you know, our outreach, our specific outreach to community organizations, we haven't gotten to that point yet. But in terms of CEQA, all this information was sent to those community organizations through OWOW and through the Disadvantaged Community Initiative.
Would there be opportunity to allow maybe studies through some of these community-based organizations that I know are funded through HRTP or CARB in order, usually they hire interns to do these environmental studies where there would be opportunities to include them. I mean, that's how I got started, right? SAPA gave me a tiny little grant and I did the alum study. So is there opportunities to look into those types of, I know we're looking at operators at water districts, but maybe including a newer generation in these types of studies?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We just hired a communication specialist at SAPA, and we've talked with Sarah about this. We haven't had one before.
Sure.
And so, and SAPA's been, one reason why SAPA is so good is we have the resources of the member agencies, and we take advantage of that. But we hired this new person into this slot in order to help us with those things. So she started a month ago. She's going to develop a communication plan for SAPA as well as for this program. And so we don't have that yet, but she'll be tasked with that and reaching out to these community organizations, disadvantaged communities. We identified that as a priority. We think that's a good role for SAPA.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, we have to figure out how to do that, right? We did the grant, we did it really well, we have a lot of contacts, but we still haven't figured out what's the best way, because it's resource intensive. You want to get results, but we need to hear from these voices, right?
Yeah. That
typically aren't part of our planning process. Mm-hmm. So we're committed to that. I just can't tell you specifically what that looks like.
Okay. So, I lost my questions. My big concern is, in order for cloud seeding, and this is just based on research that I've done in some of my time on this planet, you need clouds, right? And I see that in the areas, that's usually where clouds get trapped. That's where you're putting them. But what happens if you miss? We're not known for being a very cloudy area, and our clouds move pretty quickly, move out of the way.
Right.
That's and I do this from storm watching, right? Where we're like, we're gonna get the biggest storm, and then it just like breaks up in the mountains, or ends up being a small. By the time it reaches us, they're gone. So what happens if you miss? I mean.
Great question.
I think President Denstadt had a great question where if we invest this and now $32,000 goes into empty cloud, no
right.
clouds.
So that's a great question. And so what the operator does is they use a weather forecasting system. Mm-hmm. And it could almost be up to the minute.
Right.
And so what I suspect would happen, again, I've never done one of these programs, is that based on the weather forecasting, they get data from NOAA and other sources, and it's plugged into their model. So they're able to predict, within an hour, 30 minutes, whatever, when to cloud seed. So I assume there would be an alert sent out to the operators who operate the facilities that, we're potentially going to start it at, it often rains at night. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it does.
So I'm thinking these guys are going to have to go out there at 11 p.m., right? Like, we think we're going to cloud seed at 11, and then there would be a validation of, yes, go ahead and start it up. But that's almost like a minute-to-minute basis. And so they would use the weather forecasting to make sure the clouds are the right type, right? They're in the right location, and, the timing is right for, when to cloud seed. So they would use modeling to be able to make sure that they would do it in the right way.
Oh, man, to be a cloud nerd and
Right.
I can imagine that's exciting. Okay, is there a percentage of error, though, that we are accepting in case we,
So that's a great question. So what we've looked into is there have been some cloud seeding programs where, first of all, if it's a vast area like the Colorado
Sure.
the Rockies, you can accept a lot of uncertainty.
You should just literally shoot it.
We don't have that much, but
Right.
there is a level of uncertainty, but our program's very targeted in terms of, where the units are, what ranges we're trying to cloud seed. And the validation component will help us understand were our operations, did we see the right clouds? And did we see them at the right time? And did we see the benefits? So the validation is going to look at all those questions.
Okay, and then with kind of following up on my colleague's question, is there a kill point where the agency, or a reassessment point in between the 4 years where the agencies say, you know what, it wasn't worth the risk, or we can't do it anymore, it's too expensive? Is there any type of contingency plan for that?
I assume we can cancel contracts on 30-day notice. I think absolutely. Now, is the idea that we build it into specifically, we want to get the results after each year.
Yeah.
And they would be presented to the commission. So I liked President Denstadt's suggestion that each year is contingent, right?
On the grants.
On the grants, but also, evaluating the previous year.
Right.
So we wouldn't necessarily have the commission approve all 4 years altogether, but each year is contingent on a review. And
Of the program.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and that would be a quick review, though, right?
And we have time to do it in between,
Rain seasons?
Seasons, right?
Okay. And then the last one, so I've seen 100,000 presentations where we talk about we don't have the infrastructure to capture stormwater. Now, as arid as we are, you would need a lot more. What makes us think that we're going to capture even if just a little bit acre feet more?
It's a great question. So we've looked at storms going back, I don't know how many years, at least 10 years, maybe more. And we specifically looked at which storms end up sending water to the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
Right? And it's only a couple storms a year. It has to be a big storm. We would not cloud seed those storms.
Okay.
Right? They're too big, right? It's already producing a lot of water. But all the storms in between, all that storm water gets captured in the upper watershed.
Right.
Behind, all the way, the upper watershed all the way to Prado. Right? So those are the storms we want to cloud seed, that we know
Will get
that
captured.
the additional rain stays in the watershed, doesn't end up in the ocean.
Okay, so that makes sense why you didn't place any here, right? But that does that.
So
actually
we're
makes
targeting the
sense.
mountains, right?
Where there are
and,
clouds.
For snowpack, because again, if it's snow, it's not going to run off immediately.
Right. Right. Well, those were all my questions. Like I said, you did a phenomenal job presenting this, and I like Laura says, it's incredibly exciting. I have my doubts only from, programs like Edison's, PG&E's that, they're not, groundbreaking. So hopefully this turns out to at least help our watershed, and I do appreciate you expediting in order to help us with this drought. So I hope something comes of it. But
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Absolutely. And just for the sake of my colleagues, this is just the first bite at the apple for us. So if it were to go to the commission were then to take a vote, it would come back to the board here for authorization, ultimately for a budgetary concern, correct? Or are we changing some process now? Because it's not drafted in the accepted budget right now, the adopted budget by SAPA, correct? So it would be a budget amendment that would be done by the member agencies and would come back to each member agency,
Right. And
correct?
Each member agency tends to do it differently. So,
Yes. So
yes.
So traditionally, that's the way we've handled it in the past, so this isn't the first bite of the apple. So if you do have additional questions or something comes up, we certainly know how to contact Mr. Mosier. I would encourage each one of you, if you have additional questions or something comes up to your thoughts after the process, he's available to take your calls and is happy to, I'm sure, entertain the discussion as we move forward with this, and hopefully those applications get heard by DWR and whoever else up at the state to get those wheels grinding faster, since they've got so much money that they can hand to people. I wish they'd just hurry up and do that. And we thank you today for your presentation. It was very informative. I think Director Gardner has certainly some feedback from the rest of the board as to what our thoughts are and how he'll move forward in those discussions, and will be advised and kept up to date on what we're moving into come the future with SAPA. So with that, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, President Denstat and the board, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think I took too much time, but it was fun.
No, we took
I think it was us. You had us deep in. You had us in the upside down.
So,
This comes to us. Commission.
yes, we'll have another opportunity to talk about this for sure.
It doesn't
So,
sound like
yes.
that's correct.
Yeah, President Denstat, that would be probably July.
So the commission has to decide first what they're going to do.
Correct.
So if the commission does vote yes on it, then it comes back to us for basically a ratification that there will be an additional SAPA
Correct.
cost to cover this. But the decision of whether it moves forward as a pilot or not is happening at SAPA, not here.
Correct.
So we have a representative who's going to vote
Correct.
on behalf of Western.
Correct.
at that.
But are we voting on being participants?
No,
Okay,
no.
That's,
Our
I think,
representative at
what the
SAPA
question
is voting on whether the program moves forward or not.
Sure.
If
If they do.
And if it carries forward at the SAPA commission, then we would have basically a ratification that there will be an extra $32,000
Correct.
if all the finances work out and Jeff's successful getting the grant of additional expense for the program through SAPA.
Okay.
Correct. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
Clear as mud on how the
Right,
process
no,
works, right?
let's, moving on. We're already over an hour into our meeting and we haven't even hit the consent calendar yet.
Right.
Okay, folks, it's now time for the consent calendar. Let's go through the process here. Any board member wishing to pull any item from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull 6A.
Okay. 6A. Any other polls? Okay. Any members of the public wishing to comment on any item on the consent calendar?
I see no requests.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Williams on the Zoom today?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Take the rest of the items.
Hold on just a sec. Mr. Williams, welcome to our meeting, sir. Did you have any comments regarding 6C?
Good morning, board members. Mike Williams, Columbia Capital. No, I don't. Gary Martz from TD Bank and I were just standing by in case there was any questions on the consent item.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We do appreciate you being here in attendance today and ready for those questions, although we are hearing none.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Madam President, I would move approval of items 6B, C, and D.
Okay, I have a motion to approve 6B, 6C, and 6D. Looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and call for the vote. Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Denstat?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries for items B through D, 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, go back to 6A on the consent calendar item being pulled by Director Torres. Director Torres, your comments.
Yeah, since this grand jury report that we received was initiated by the public, I thought it would be incumbent upon us to present it to the public, present our response to the public. I don't know if you're ready to do that now or give a summary, but that's why I pulled it.
Well, we have the presentation available that we gave at the committee meeting, so we did do it in a public meeting.
We do.
All right, so let's go to the next slide, Spencer. So as an overview, and then I'll have Tim do the bulk of the presentation as we did at committee. On March 15th, Riverside County Civil Grand Jury submitted a final report. They received complaints issued in 2 general categories about governance and communication at Western. Western has 90 days to respond to the grand jury's report, which is June 15th. So we have gone to the committee, had an extensive discussion about this, showed the committee what our responses would be, and we will make the June 15th deadline. Let's go to the next slide. So the report findings, next slide. They're in numerous categories, so I'll have Tim walk through these categories again and highlight and the format of the slides is the complaint, and that's the complaint that the grand jury apparently received from someone, we don't know who, and then the finding. So that's kind of how this works as we walk through. So there's numerous findings. So Tim?
Okay, so the findings are broken down into 2 categories, governance and communication. The first couple are governance, or actually the first few are governance. In the report we received, the complaint that the grand jury put in the report was there is a lack of residential customer representation on the board of directors. The finding, as reported by the grand jury, is that there is a perceived lack of residential customer representation on the board of directors. We have the opportunity to respond to the findings in a number of ways. I'll get into those as we do each of these responses. So in this one, Western decided that we can neither agree nor disagree with this finding because the report does not specify the magnitude or sources of the alleged lack of residential customer representation. However, we did say that the divisions do comply with all requirements of the California Voters' Right Act. Board members are not required to be Western retail water customers, but they must reside within that division. So each of you resides within the division that you are elected to. And furthermore, 3 of the 5 elected board members represent direct retail customers in divisions 2, 3, and 5. Next slide. Finding number 1, the complaint in the report stated that budget-based billing system is illegal. The grand jury finding is that Western's budget-based rate structure complies with California's Constitution, including Proposition 218, and it is designed to encourage water conservation. That is the finding of the grand jury. We agreed with that finding. We further state that a recent trial court ruling upheld our rate structure and that rate structure complies with Proposition 218. Next slide. Another governance finding, the complaint, budget-based billing is unfair. The finding by the grand jury, Western's water and sewer rates are based on actual and projected costs incurred by Western. Whether the rates are fair or not is subjective. We agreed with this finding and we assert that our rates are fair. Again, the recent trial court ruling upheld our rate structure. That rate structure is compliant with California Proposition 218. And fair is defined as free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice. Our rates are fair as they were determined using industry standards and objective criteria. So we were very clear in our response. Finding number 1.4, next slide please. Also a governance finding. Rate increases were illegally approved. That is the complaint. The grand jury finding, the procedure followed to increase residential water rates on June 2nd, 2021 is in compliance with an August 2020 California Supreme Court decision. That was the grand jury's finding. We agreed with that finding, again stating that a trial court ruling upheld our rate structure and it is fully compliant with Proposition 218. We work really hard to make sure that our rate structure is compliant with 218 and go above and beyond what is required in Proposition 218. Next slide. Finding 1.5, also governance. The complaint in the report stated that Western's customers pay more for water than Riverside Public Utilities and Eastern Municipal Water District customers. The grand jury finding is that Western customers do pay more for water than Riverside Public Utilities and Eastern customers due to costs actually incurred by Western to obtain and supply water to its customers. We agreed with that finding. Furthermore, every water agency has different costs, including costs of water sources and infrastructure needs. If you'll recall, 60% of the water in our retail service area comes from Lake Oroville, 700 miles away. Riverside Public Utilities, 100% of the water comes from 12 miles away. So yes, it is a different source of supply. Next slide, please. Finding 1.6, governance. The complaint was Western's executive managers do a poor job of operating Western's projects and services. That was the complaint. The grand jury, however, found that there is evidence that a few disgruntled residential customers are spreading misleading and inaccurate information about Western's executive managers and Western's policies on social media. However, Western's executive managers operate Western as required by California law and Western policies. We agreed with the grand jury finding and that everyone at Western, including its executive managers, work very hard to operate Western in compliance with California law and our own policies. Next slide. So finding 2.1, it's number 2 because we're now moving into the communication area. The complaint, Western is hiding information from residential customers. The grand jury finding, there was no evidence found that Western is deliberately hiding information from residential customers. We agreed with the finding. We do not hide information from the public. Western provides significant information to the public through various proactive outreach tactics and via Western's website. We are in full compliance with the California Public Records Act. So anybody requests information, we promptly provide that information. Next slide, please. Also in communications, finding 2.2, the complaint in the report was Western ignores residential customers. The finding by the grand jury, several residential customers feel ignored by board members, especially by the four board members with few or no residential customers in their division areas. We neither agree nor disagree with this finding because the report does not specify the magnitude or sources for the alleged finding. Our customers' concerns and input provided to the board immediately receive attention. We're very quick to respond to customers' requests that come through the website or directly to a board member. Any follow-up activities are done by staff. So if the board members get a request from the public and the board members quickly send it to staff, we take care of that very promptly. Western's board members routinely attend community events, meetings, and other customer engagement activities extending beyond their specific divisional boundaries. The Western Board's voting track record demonstrates a commitment to set policy for the benefit of all Western customers. So we were very clear in our response. Next slide. We're going to move on to the recommendations of the grand jury. Let's move forward. So recommendation number 1, by January 1st, 2023, the Board of Directors develop, adopt, and implement a policy that requires all board members to participate together in biennial sessions related to A, conflict resolution, and B, governance of a special district. This recommendation has been implemented. Beginning in 2021, Western's board members initiated a leadership development training program that is still ongoing. Western will continue the practice of providing board members access to ongoing leadership development resources. Board members are also encouraged to participate in conflict resolution and governance training through various special district and utility associations in which most Western's board members frequently participate. CSDA, Aqua, etc. This is already being done. Moving on. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 2, by January 1st, 2023, the Board of Directors develop, adopt, and implement a policy that requires user-friendly versions of highly technical and complex reports be available on its website so that interested customers have a clear understanding of the content of those reports. This recommendation has already been implemented. We do provide user-friendly versions of our reports and will continue this practice. The examples include the budget and brief, which will come out after the board hopefully adopts today's budget. Our consumer confidence report, which is due to every customer by the end of this month, every single year, and new customer welcome packets, which are sent out to new customers on a routine basis. This recommendation has already been implemented. Next slide, please. By June 30th, 2023, the Board of Directors developed an open data portal on its website so residential customers have access to state and local data sets used in Western status reports, proposals, and decisions. We responded that the recommendation is not supported by the findings and requires further analysis. The data that we do use to inform board recommendations and decisions is available on our website and our third-party portals. This is PrimeGov, for example, where we post our agendas. All of this information is in the reports and attachments on a routine basis. In addition, several initiatives are underway to perform a customer needs assessment, increase accessibility across digital platforms, and connect customers with their water usage data and enhance the support of Public Records Act requests. The board will remember that we are working on a portal which will take customer AMI, meter data, and make it directly available to those customers. And through another initiative, we're trying to automate some of the public records requests and direct people to information using both PrimeGov and our laser features. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 4, by June 30th, 2023, the Board of Directors developed, adopt, and implement a policy that established a customer water bill of rights. B, prominently displays the customer water bill of rights on Western's website, and C, annually mails residential customers a printed copy of customer water bill of rights. We will accept this and we will work on this. We will get it implemented by the date of June 30th, 2023, just over a year from now. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 5, by June 30th, 2023, the Board of Directors improves access to Western's governing regulations, ordinances, and resolutions, including links to relevant laws on its website so that accessing that information takes fewer steps and is user-friendly. This recommendation has already been implemented. Visitors to Western's website can access this information from the footer in the site using this site column. Furthermore, if you just type in the word code in the search bar at the top, it'll take you immediately to it. Next slide. Recommendation number 6, by January 1st, 2023, the Board of Directors develop, adopt, and implement a policy that supports a customer-centric management culture and communication strategy. This recommendation has been implemented. In January 2020, Western conducted a customer service assessment using a third-party consultant. In December 2021, Western readopted superior service as one of its strategic priorities. It was previously adopted in 2014 under the 10-year aspirations, the 2025 aspirations, so that was done almost a decade ago. And Western initiated a reorganization of the agency in January of 2022, establishing a communications and customer experience department. This department brings together customer-focused team members to integrate the customer's perspective into our operational decision-making. Already been done. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 7, by January 1st, 2023, the Board of Directors develop, adopt, and implement a policy that requires all members of the Board of Directors, as well as Western executive managers, to frequently participate in more public events, such as town hall meetings, where they A, actively listen to residential customers' concerns, B, assist residential customers' understanding of water-related issues, and C, actively seek ways to increase residential customers' satisfaction with Western. This recommendation has been implemented. Western's existing annual community engagement plan provides a strategic roadmap for Western-driven and sponsored community events. We participate in a minimum of 37 community events, meetings. We host a minimum of 10 in-person and virtual meetings and sponsor a minimum of 17 community meetings per year. And each quarter at the Government and Community Affairs meeting, the communications team develops and delivers a message map and highlights exactly what we've done in the previous 3 months and what we're doing in the upcoming 3 months. Next slide, please. So the staff recommendation at the committee, at the Finance Committee on March 16th, was to take this to the board and ask the board to accept the staff's recommendations as they are presented and allow staff to submit the letter to the grand jury by the June 15th deadline.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions from the board?
Questions? No. Oh, sorry, I was waiting. I don't have any questions. Thank you so much for presenting this. I think some of those recommendations were important to for us to adhere to, specifically recommendation 4 and 1. Though I do take issue with some of the comments that we neither agreed or disagreed with. I think, everyone can improve. So I'm not sure at this point if it's, it would be my suggestion that we take more of a stance of we can maybe improve rather than we don't agree or disagree and we're going to move forward from it. But that's my only comment. This did move forward from committee, but otherwise, thank you for presenting it at a whim.
Was that a motion, Director Torres?
No, it's not.
Any other comments? Looking for a motion on this item?
Madam President, I will move approval of the response to the grand jury report.
Okay, I have a motion from Director Gardner,
I will second it.
and I have a second from Director Rizvi. Madam Secretary, if we could go ahead and call for the vote.
Thank you. Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
No.
President Dinstedt?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 4-1 with Director Torres voting no.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our items to be added to the agenda.
There's nothing to add to the agenda today.
Okay, thank you very much. Legal counsel, anything to add to the agenda today?
No, Madam President.
Okay, and good morning, legal counsel. Haven't talked to you yet, sorry.
It's been a while.
All right, moving on to our action agenda. Moving on to our budget presentation today for consideration of adoption of our operating budget and our CIP. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. This is an exciting day for the finance team. No day is better than budget day. So they're all excited to do their presentation. I'll do a little bit of a lead-in for the team. We take the budget very seriously here. It's a big process for us. We all do a lot of work in planning and managing our costs, top to bottom in this organization. We're always thinking about cost conservation and lowering our costs and being efficient. So the budget process for me is a little different when I look at the Western process compared to other places. Other places, I was always in this position of having to tell the staff you couldn't have money for that, you couldn't have money for that. Our staff brings a very efficient budget to me because they do that before it ever gets to me. They're very thoughtful about what we're going to put in the budget. I give the staff a goal, and I say we're going to allow for a certain amount of growth in the budget because of inflation. All of our costs are always going up, and the board is well aware that we're living in about an 8% inflationary world right now. So clearly fuel costs and electric costs and costs of all of our products are kind of going through the roof. So what you're going to see in front of you today is a very modest budget, and you may ask, well, how do we only have a 4% cost increase in our controllable costs in an 8% world? And that's because of our financial planning and some of the things that we've done to prepare ourselves for inflation and for having reserves that are very healthy and having interest rates that are very healthy on our investments. So a lot of work went into this. We've had 2 extensive budget workshops with the board where the board has been very engaged and asked a lot of questions. We've provided those questions back. We spent 1 workshop primarily on the operations budget and 1 primarily on the capital budget. So let's go to the next slide. Most important to me is, we went through a 4-year budget increase, a 4-year rate adoption some time ago. And that took a huge amount of financial forecasting with our finance team, because when you're approving 4-year rates, you have to anticipate what the budget's going to do. We approve a 2-year budget, but 4-year rates this time around. So we were very cognizant that we have to live within our means. And when I say our means, we've already established our revenues, so now we're establishing our costs. So we wanted to make sure that our costs stayed within our revenue requests and what were generated in our rates, and they do that. So we're well within the rates that we're charging our customers. The next thing I wanted to ensure was that we were meeting our strategic priorities. So this board adopted a 3-year strategic plan. And we have used that strategic plan as the prioritization of the activities that we're doing. And that's well engaged within this budget and meets all of our strategic priorities. As we build projects and programs, our world gets more complicated, more complex, and we get as Ops likes to say, we keep adding new toys to our system. When they say toys, they mean pump stations, reservoirs, pipelines, operational scenarios, agreements with other agencies to bring in outside water supplies that we're not used to taking on. Every time you do that, it creates operational needs and engineering needs. And so because of our forethought in our finances, we have the ability to add some positions in this budget. So we'll be adding 3 new positions in the first year of the 2-year budget and 2 positions in the second. First year, it's going to be 2 operations personnel and 1 engineering, and the second year, it's going to be in our customer experience division. So very fortunate to have that opportunity to add some positions to cover the wide myriad of things that we accomplish at Western and the regional leadership that we're trying to push ourselves into for this region. Because remember, this region pays property taxes, and we want to make sure that they're getting a great service for the property tax revenue that we receive. And then, as I said, inflationary pressures are great. We've anticipated the pressures through our committees. We've talked a lot about what we're doing with fuel costs and energy costs and how we're accommodating those with some long-term contracts and things. So we've made a lot of assumptions about how that's going to react throughout the year. So we think we've got that all covered. But it's definitely a more challenging time to do a budget right now because of the worldwide economy and, you know, the problems that we're having with products and distribution system issues and all that. So all that's included in the budget. We're very proud of the budget. We've put a lot of work into it. Let's go to the next slide. So let me turn it over to the leader of the finance group. Rod is Zooming, and Rod led the finance team on pulling this together, and I want to give him an opportunity to kind of lead off the finance side of the presentation. So Rod?
Thank you, Craig, members of the board. I'm going to go back to something that Craig said, and that is the process, and the budget is a process. It began last October, and as you've experienced over the course of the last month, we've had a couple of workshops, one devoted to the operating, one more or less devoted to the capital budget, as well as getting back to the board with questions that they had about the operating budget item. The proposed operating budget is sufficiently funded from existing rates. And so, as was explained in the workshops, what's different about this budget is instead of informing you as to what we need to adjust the rates by to make sure we have adequate revenue, we've lived within our means, meaning that the board rates that were established a little over a year ago for the next 4 years are certainly sufficient for this 2-year budget. You also heard from the second board workshop about the capital improvement plan and how we deem it affordable. And that affordability test is multi-pronged in terms of looking at third-party funding resources, looking at available funds in the various enterprises. And last but not least, certainly not least, is the days cash on hand, which is a big test for us to meet in terms of rating agency expectations about how financially strong and solid we are. Through the remainder of this presentation, you're going to hear some things that came out of the workshops. You'll have time for questions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to Daisy, and she'll continue this presentation. And thank you, board.
Good morning, everyone. So good morning, board members and any members of the public. So today, next slide, please. I will recap some of the same slides that we already have presented in our previous budget workshops. So next slide, please. So the board has chosen to adopt a 2-year operating budget as a management tool, and I would also like to point out that this proposed operating budget only focuses on operating funds, so it excludes all designated funds such as capacity charge funds, asset replacement funds, etc. The designated funds are mainly used to pay for capital projects. Next slide, please. So this is the 6th consecutive biennial budget, and it covers fiscal years 22-23 and 23-24. The proposed budget provides a 2-year forecast of expenses, and it is more efficient in projecting needs. It also allows carryover of unexpended funds between the first and the second year of the budget. And lastly, Western's budget has previously earned the prestigious awards from Government Finance Officers Association and the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. Next slide, please. So this budget summary format that you see on the screen is one that presents our revenue and our expense line items in a summarized format by functional elements. And this budget summary is a condensed version of the proposed budget resolution 3226 exhibit, which is part of the budget packet. The budget is divided into 3 main areas on this summary: operating funds, non-operating funds, and transfers. So our operating funds represent operating revenues and expenses such as water sales, water purchases, and wastewater disposal, and result from exchange transactions associated with the principal activities of Western. Other revenues and expenses not included in the above categories are presented as non-operating revenues and expenses. And then the transfers represent allocations to and from funds for asset replacement and debt service funding. So now I would like to draw your attention to the bottom section of this summary, which shows the total spending authority, which is made up of uses of operating funds, the uses of non-operating funds, as well as the transfers, for a total spending authority proposed today for fiscal year 23 of $157.7 million and $166.4 million for the second year. And these amounts are growing 15% in the first year and 6% in the second year. But if we exclude, as we had mentioned in the previous budget workshops, purchase water, which is demand-based, the total spending authority is only growing 4% annually. The budget resolution in your packet, which shows more details, does provide the following authorities. It establishes the total spending authority for each fiscal year and provides specific authority for the general manager regarding labor, budget carryovers, as well as demand-based exclusions from the spending authority. And this concludes my presentation of the proposed operating budget. So if you have any questions, I would gladly take them now before I hand it off to Tim for the capital improvement facilities plan.
So we can, if, it's up to the board how you'd like to handle it. If you'd like to ask questions about the operating budget, we can do that now, or we can hold all the questions till Tim's going to present the capital budget. We could take them all at the end, however the board wants to proceed.
Okay. Does anybody have any burning questions right now, or can you wait till the end of the presentation? Okay, let's keep going.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to present the capital improvement and facilities plan. As I did at the budget workshop on the 19th, I will not go into as much detail. I think I spent 40 minutes talking with you last time. I promise it will not be 40 minutes this time. But I am going to start by reminding the board that everything we do on the capital improvement and facilities plan is a team effort. Every division of the district has its hands in capital improvement, facilities improvement, asset replacement, as well as outreach when we replace an asset, when we're in the community replacing an asset. So every team at this district has a hand in developing the capital improvement budget. What I didn't tell you last time is that I don't do all of that. I don't pull this all together. Anita Wilcox, sitting in the audience, was not here. She was on vacation when we did the budget workshop, so she left me standing up there by myself. But she is the one who orchestrates and pulls all this information together. So although it is a team effort, Anita is the one who does the herding of cats.
Be honest, she sleeps with this thing under her pillow. Okay, we know this.
I can't speak to that. As a reminder, the request to approve a capital spending plan, although we look forward in 5 years, we're only asking for a 2-year approval of the capital spending plan. Another reminder is that although we're talking about millions of dollars, any project over $100,000 independently comes back to the district back to the board for board approval of an independent project. Next slide, please. We don't choose projects just out of the sky. We don't just say we're going to do this, this, and this. We actually work together as a team to rank and prioritize the projects that need to get done. We look at everything from asset condition to safety to consequence of failure to the financial benefit to the district to the availability of funding to actually go forward with these projects. Next slide. Again, it's a 2-year plan, although we look at 5 years. The top 10 projects in year 1 represent 81% of the total project budget request. They range from projects that are currently in progress, Cahalco switchgear, for example, the McKinley grade separation project. The board has already approved those projects, but they have capital spending requirements in the upcoming fiscal year as well as when they were approved. They include projects that have grant funding. For example, the GAC, which is granular activated carbon treatment for PFAS at the wastewater treatment facility. And what else got? Sarcut non-potable well and pipeline project. Both of these received grant funding, but on this list, we're just talking about the cost of the project. The offsets, which I'll talk about later, are not included in this chart. Some of these projects are things that are still being planned and moving forward, and their first year will be next year. For example, the ERP improvements, which is the software, the backbone of the finance system here at the district, and things like the Paris Valley Pipeline turnout, which would provide imported water on the east side of the freeway. Let's move to the next slide. Year 2, the top 10 projects represent 83% of the spending request. Some of these projects are similar to what you saw in year 1 because they're continuing on into the second year, and other projects get their start in the second year. But in total, in year 2, 83% of the spending request is represented by these 10 projects. Next slide. The minor capital and risk mitigation projects are special projects. These are small projects, less than $100,000 in nature, that keep the district running. In the minor capital project, these are valves, large meters, pumps, motors, the things that we do every single day to deliver water to our customers and take wastewater from our customers. If we had to list every single valve and every single pump and every single motor that we wanted to replace, the book that we put together would not be 120 pages, it would be 220 pages. So instead, in order to be flexible, to be responsive to the needs of the assets around this district, we have asked for $1 million. This is up from $750 2 years ago per year for these small little projects that keep us running on a day-to-day basis. Again, these projects are only up to $100,000. Any project above $100,000 comes back to the board for independent approval. The risk mitigation projects that are on this list, this is a new category of projects. It represents $200,000, up to $200,000 a year of spending on things that are associated with securing our assets. This could be replacement of fencing. This could be the installation of security cameras, motion detection switches, various other things that keep our assets safe. In the past, these items have floated to the bottom and we just don't get to them every single year. So instead, we're making this a separate category and special attention will be paid to these, again, under $100,000. Anything above $100,000 will come back to the board for independent approval. Next slide, please. So how do we compare to the current fiscal year? You're going to see on the far right that cash out the door is going up. But if you look at the offsets, these are funds that are coming from the 2020A bond funding, a line of credit financing, federal and state grants, or partner agency funding. There are some projects in here where we are not the majority contributor to the capital. Folks like the City of Riverside, Riverside Highland Water Company, Meeks and Daly Water Company, and the University of California, they're contributing funds. We're technically a pass-through to a project that secures their water rights. So our offsets are roughly the same as they were in the current fiscal year, roughly $21 million. The net cash out the door is climbing by between $9 and $10 million per year, but we do have some large projects coming online. These large projects are the Cannon Pump Station, for example, the GAC treatment that I talked about, and the Murrieta Water Quality Treatment Project that is planned for the next 3 years. So you'll see that there's more cash going out the door, but if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about the fact that this is affordable. So it is a large team. The team works on this. We come together, we put our projects together, and then we hand it back to finance, and finance conducts an affordability review. The finance team, i.e. Daisy, Daisy actually does all this work. I don't really know what Kevin does. The goal here is to balance our service excellence and affordability. 3 years ago, when I did this presentation, we were talking about getting days cash on hand to rise above 400 days cash on hand. We are now looking at a large set of projects, but our days cash on hand is growing because of the policies that the board put in place regarding investments. Some increases in our investments, property taxes, those kinds of things. But we're now looking at days cash on hand in the range of 550 days cash on hand, which is the reason why the rating agency bumped us to a AAA credit rating, because we are strong financially. So you can see the planned expenditures. This is cash out the door. This number is slightly different than the number that we showed you at the workshop, because at the workshop we were talking solely about Western projects. Now we are talking about Western projects, plus in the first year, the capital call from Western for our proportionate share of RCRA projects, Syrah projects, and the Chino Desalter Authority projects. So the dollars are a little bit higher, the days cash on hand are a couple of days lower, but this is all in all of the capital requests that we're putting forward to the board. So next slide, please. I'm going to hand it to Kevin to talk about some of the customer benefits of this capital plan.
Great, thank you, Tim. Good morning. I'm Kevin Mascaro, Director of Finance. At the last budget workshop, staff was asked to bring back highlights of some of these special achievements accomplished by staff during this fiscal year that benefit customers. So starting from the left here, Western staff continued to actively pursue federal and state grants with over $9.4 million awarded this year. Most grants we receive partially offset the cost of construction for important water and sewer infrastructure. So each grant dollar received means one less dollar paid by our ratepayers. Next, staff applied for and received over $618,000 from the state's arrearage payment program. This amount was applied as credits to over 700 customer accounts with an eligible past due balance from, that was incurred during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This was a tremendous benefit for those experiencing financial hardship. Also, phase 2 of the meter replacement program was completed, which means that now we have smart meters installed at over 94% of our customers in the Riverside service area. In addition, 2 antennas were installed in Murrieta so that meter reads can be collected automatically there as well. So these efforts will allow customers to see their water usage in near real time and receive leak notifications when the customer portal is launched later this year. The customer portal will give our customers meaningful information so that they can have greater control over their water use. Additionally, we had several support tools roll out to help customers achieve their water-saving goals, such as our online H2O depot, where water-saving devices can be ordered. The Flume pilot project was launched, and we continue to offer landscape efficiency evaluations and rebates on water-saving devices and programs. Now, on the operations side, the reservoir management system was implemented. Now, this ensures the highest water quality while reducing the need for hydrant flushing, and it allows for water tanks to be filled when energy costs are at their very lowest. And finally, we increased our efficiency and lowered costs by operations bringing out formerly outsourced activities in-house with a fabrication and machine shop. So these are just a few examples of how Western's culture of innovation and efficiency materialized during the year with the goal of saving our customers money and enhancing our service reliability. Next slide, please. So the proposed biennial operating budget and the capital improvement and facilities plan will allow Western staff to continue providing safe, reliable water and sewer services to our customers. Therefore, staff recommends the approval of these three recommendations listed here, which is approving the general manager's operating budget for the biennial period, approving the amended job classification plan and salary grades table that incorporates the 5 new positions that Craig mentioned earlier, as well as the cost of living adjustment, and approve the capital improvement and facilities plan for the biennial period as well. All of the budget materials presented at the 2 recent board workshops are available to the public online at wmwd.com/budget. And this concludes staff's presentation, and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. The budget in a nutshell, right? All right. Any members of the public wanting to comment on this item?
I have no request to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and bring it back up to the board for comments or questions. Anyone?
Madam President, could we just confirm whether there were or were not any written comments received timely yesterday or by yesterday?
Do you
Director
know of
Gardner,
any?
I received no written comments.
Okay, I didn't think so. I just wanted to verify that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Comments?
I just want to say great job. I think our budget, our finance team is one to, that other agencies should absolutely mirror and look up to. You guys, you all, ladies included, do a phenomenal job at rating, at presenting, and keeping us whole and staying under budget. So great job. I move to approve.
Okay.
Second. I'm good.
All right, I have a motion to approve in a second. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, no, just a quick comment or
Okay.
two. I have really appreciated the workshops that we've had, the level of detail, the always feeling very comfortable to ask questions about it and receive accurate answers. This is my first budget process through with this board, and it's really been pain-free. So I'm sure on your end, it was not always pain-free, but I appreciate what's been presented. And I am really liking this slide that has the customer benefits. I wanted to see, though, if we could just highlight, they're all wonderful, but the one that sticks out especially to me is the development of in-house fabrication and machine shop. Early on, after I started, I got a tour of the ops center, and that machine shop was being developed, like part of it had been implemented, but it sounds like now there's even more to it. And what that has done, the ingenuity, the creativity, the dedication of our employees to want to create a place like that within our system, and what that benefit is to us as an agency, but more importantly to our customers. I didn't know if anyone wanted to touch on that a little bit more.
I can.
Okay.
Is it okay if I comment
Yeah.
on that? So you're touching on an important element to the staff. So, this is a customer service ethic that the staff embraces. It's very easy as a staff when something breaks to call a contractor and ask them to fix it. And we pay a premium to bring a contractor in. You're paying profit, you're paying upcharges on the parts, and you don't really have ownership of how that fix takes place. So we made a commitment several years ago that we wanted to minimize that because we save money and we fix it right. And so this is it's a real customer service ethic. So the machine shop is an extension of that. And Chris Fike was here at the engineering committee yesterday, and he held up a widget that we actually had fabricated from a block of steel in our shop. We would have paid a huge premium to pay another fabrication company, a private fabrication firm, to do that. But I think it's
Why
much.
are you wanting to say that? Because then we have to give raises.
No. Well, that's another part of it, is one of the reasons that we get the caliber of employees that we get in our operations group is because they get to do that.
Yeah.
And they love that. And we've had our maintenance team here in front of the board, and they receive awards for their work in the field, and that's why they stay at Western. And that's why people come to Western. And so it's really important to us that the customers understand, and it's hard for them because they don't see it. I think the board understands how much effort goes into the cost-saving measures. Another example that you don't see in this budget, and it was prior to your time on the board, Director Roten, is that we took on a whole electrical services division. We never had that before. When I got here, we didn't have an electrical services team. That team has now grown into electrical services and all of our SCADA and instrumentation. And we did that because it was costing us too much money to bring outside contractors in to do the work. We didn't control their work. Every product that we received from them was unique. We didn't know how they were talking to each other. And every time we wanted to fix it, we were obligated to bring back a contractor from the outside. That was a huge waste, what I thought was a huge waste of money. So we were far better off hiring electrical services personnel and starting that division to get a better product, more reliability, and save our customers money. That just continues with the whole mechanical services growth. And so, we're really proud of that. We work really hard at it. And, thank goodness we have employees that love doing that.
Thank you.
Any other comments,
Yeah,
questions?
just a real quick follow-on to what Craig said. Not only does this in-house capability save us money, maybe more importantly, it saves us time. And if something has failed that shuts down a piece of our system somewhere, that can have a really significant impact on our customers. And this allows us to fix things more quickly, which is of great importance. Just a quick comment on the budget overall. My two primary concerns with any budget are how does it affect rates? And in this case, it does not affect rates, which was important to me. And the other thing that is important to me is, does it contain the right things? Does it contain projects that we ought to be doing in the right priority? There's always a project you'd like to do, but you don't have funding to do it today. You may also not have staff to do it today. But I think our team put together a budget that does do the right things and in the right order. There was nothing, and I asked the question, what things did people ask to have in the budget that aren't there? And I have to say that I agreed with all the prioritizing that was done, and that we are doing the right things in the right order, and we'll get to other things that would be nice to do next budget or the budget after. So I think you did a fabulous job. As Director Torres said, our financial side is one that ought to be copied by lots of other organizations, including some governmental ones. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. And just to go to your point, as well as it saves us money, it saves us time and energy and a lot of things, but I think the really important part of it is that we have employees that take pride and turn out a top quality product that is directly being used in-house, in-shop, for our customers. And you cannot get that kind of pride by buying something off a shelf generally. It's just straight manufacture, and sometimes there's flaws, and sometimes there's this, and sometimes there's that. So There's a real quality control portion of what it is that goes into doing that kind of in-house fabrication and work, and we certainly appreciate that we have a level of employee that's capable and skilled, highly skilled at doing specialized work like that. It is a real benefit to our organization. A couple of comments and a couple of questions, and I just want to highlight some things, folks. We've gone through, as we've pointed out in this, several workshops. We've had a number of opportunities to communicate with staff on the side, talk with a general manager, talk with finance staff should we need, if we have additional questions and things. And I really want people to understand the product that's turned out when staff bring these budgets to us and we do these high-level workshops and we talk in depth about all the things that are coming down. And I want to show you the example of what was not produced in a packet because it was given to us for the CIP and the spreadsheet because it was so large and the print was so in-depth on this stuff. And I'm doing this so that the public can see what goes into this. You know, years ago when I came to this organization and engineering came and said, hey, we've got all of these projects and they're millions of dollars, and I go, okay, guys, not an engineer. How do I make a decision based upon the necessity of what it is that you're bringing to me? Because, hey, this is pie in the sky stuff, and granted, if we've got all these dollars, then let's do them all, but we don't. So what is the reality of what we're faced with? They go through an incredibly complex rating system to absolutely qualify each and every project that's pushed forward in this budget as to the timing, the need, the necessity, the funding, the man-hours that go into this operation, what it takes organizationally for our commitments to make sure that we have appropriate staffing to complete and execute every single one of these, because these are mission critical for this organization. So I want people to understand the time and effort that gets placed into this document. This is not just, hey, let's just throw a couple of numbers out there. The staff is dedicated to putting exactly what in this budget that we need to do for the organization to move us forward. So it is just an incredible lift, and I thank you guys for all the time and commitment. Anita, the engineering team, everybody that puts it, the finance team, everybody that puts their time and effort into turning out this budget, because it really pays itself forward as we take so much time and effort in doing a 2-year budget. It gives us the amount of time to be able to work on all those projects so that we're not concentrating and going from budget cycle to budget cycle to budget cycle to budget cycle. So this is a really energy-saving exercise as well. Couple of things I wanted to just highlight, and I really love that you put this customer benefit piece in here. Can we talk about the level of benefits for these supporting tools of what it means to our customers? In other words, the rebates that are available and how we're funding those types of projects for our customers, because as we're moving forward with drought and we have a couple of things and people may want to take advantage of some of these tools to try to do their voluntary reduction that we're faced with in drought and trying to lower their bill and be responsible customers and help out the rest of the people in the state. If you could, Mr. Barr.
So in this year's budget, as well as fiscal year 23 and 24, there is over $700,000 in customer support programs that goes directly into helping the customer use water efficiently. These are supplemental rebate dollars for the metropolitan programs. These are support programs for our wholesale customers, whether they take imported water or not. Harupa to Rancho California Water District, you name it, we put money in the wholesale budget as well, and they requested for their projects. An example of projects that Western helped fund in Harupa, for example, is the Flume project, which we've talked so much about. A portion of Western's proceeds did go wholesale side and to help support that. This is funded on the wholesale side by property taxes. In the retail side, it's funded out of our budget-based rate structure. So the customers that use more than their budget pay into a conservation fund. That conservation fund is roughly $2 million right now. And when we come to the board, we draw down that and ask for funding for rebate programs, for turf replacement, for toilets and washers, and everything under the sun that Metropolitan offers. We will be coming back to the board because of the drought in July with a request for funding of turf replacement, a specialized program, and that will come out of the same bucket of money, the conservation funding. So we do everything in our power to spend the money that comes in on the rate side, the conservation budget, for customer support programs.
Does that include our pot of money for our low-income assistance program that we also fund to help people afford their bills at times of need?
If I get this wrong, Kevin, please step up. So no, the pot of money that is used to fund the low-income support program comes out of rents and royalties from like cell tower leases and things like that. Under Proposition 218, you cannot subsidize one customer class or customer with another customer class. So we use other means to fund that program.
Okay. And as far as our demonstration garden is concerned, you know, we sold the property up at Alessandro where our 1 acre demonstration garden was. It was very popular with our customers. It absolutely provided a palette and people for be able to see and duplicate within their gardens to be able to maintain their landscape and beautify their home without using a tremendous amount of water. And I know we're working on a partnership down here with the March Museum. What type of funding have we placed in this budget for that demonstration garden for our customers' view?
So that is a capital plan budget. So in the first year of the capital spending plan, we have requested $100,000. In the second year of the capital spending plan, we've requested $250,000. We have applied for grant funding, but as we don't count our chickens until they hatch, it is not included in the budget documents before you today.
That's unlike Mr. Mosier, right?
No
okay,
comment.
all right, okay.
So we have applied for grant funding. We have not heard, we will not hear until the fall whether that grant funding is awarded, but staff is working very hard with the staff of the March Field Museum to develop a landscape demonstration that is complementary to the museum facility.
Okay. And to go back to Mr. Mosier's presentation, we don't have any cloud seeding money set aside in this budget, is that correct?
Specifically, we do not have cloud seeding budget. However, we do have special projects and studies money in the water resource budget, and $32,000 would fit fine in either of the fiscal years.
Okay.
And Tim, you're like, this is like the Wild Wild West. You ready for all of these?
Well,
This isn't my first rodeo.
not his first rodeo, and staff may gotten a heads up ahead of time as to what
When
the
you
line of
work on a
questions were gonna be.
document for 6 months, you've thought about a lot of things.
Nope, and I think it's really important too. And I'm going to take Tim off of the hot seat. Boy, and look at him just take off on this. And I wanted to ask Kevin to step up because this is more of his line
Right,
on
Kevin.
the finance thing. And I want to, if you could briefly talk about one, the number of grant dollars that really have offset the budget that really help you to make these numbers happen, because you guys are very successful at bringing in grant dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I want to talk about is, you know, our reserve fund and our cash on hand and what that means to our customers as far as our rating is concerned, our credit rating is concerned, and what that means when we go out to do special financing and things, and how much money that saves the customer. So if you could just highlight those really briefly, and we've already got a motion and a second to move this thing forward. So I don't want to prolong it too long, but I just wanted to get some highlighted information out there.
Well, just a quick appreciation to Melissa Matlock in the Water Resources Group. She has spearheaded these grant programs with a consulting firm that's just been outstanding. So I mentioned earlier on one of the benefits, $9.4 million, and I'm looking at what the various projects are. They all are going toward capital, and what that means is that then we either need to draw less from reserves to pay for it. Reserves are paid for by ratepayers, or we don't need to go out and debt finance that, which saves the interest cost money. So again, the grants has been a tremendous, very important, critical component of all that we do here at Western. So the reserves are, those dollar amounts are accumulated over time, either when revenue exceeds expenses or when we are setting aside money for future asset replacement. So we have an asset replacement reserve. We have, over $300 million in assets here, so they do start to wear out and need to be replaced, and we need to be ready for that. So we also have funds that are collected from developers, paid capacity charges, and that's specifically set aside for growth-related projects. So all of these reserves build up. The rating agencies look at that. And it's very similar to when you have your own credit rating for your personal self, TransUnion, Experian, and so forth. They give you a rating. And so we utilize Standard & Poor's as well as Fitch Rating Services to review us. And they're independent, and they give us a grade. And so we have a AAA from one, a AA+ from another. And what that means is just like when you have a high score, like I'm sure we all have about 150, I think is our credit score probably with this fine group. If you have a high personal credit score, when you go out for a car loan or a home loan, it helps bring that interest rate down. Why? Because you're a low risk. Likewise with Western. We pay lower interest costs on our debt because we are a low risk. And we have a high credit rating, and that reflects that. So does that about address your question there?
Absolutely. No, and I just wanted to highlight those things because I think it's really important, the steps that staff has really taken to offset budget costs, to be very concerned and be very fiscally responsible with our customers' money as we move forward. It's the same thing with our investment portfolios, to make sure that we're getting as best returns as we can while the money is sitting there, so that we have that opportunity to use it for other things when the need arises. So I just wanted to highlight those couple of things. Really appreciate staff's work and time on this. Mr. Miller, again, you've knocked it out of the park with staff and putting together a very comprehensive budget that's very easy to understand. We're looking forward to that summary being placed on our website for our customers read at night if they so choose to partake in all of the things that are wonderful about our budget. And appreciate all of my colleagues' participation in the process and your good questions along the way as we did all these workshops, because I know it can be a very lengthy process, and I know some of you have joined in this process in the first time, and it can be kind of daunting, but we've got to it. And it's now before us, and so if there are no other comments, questions.
Just a real quick comment. Staff made it really easy for us, this process. When it was coming up, I was like, oh my God, how long it's going to take, how daunting it's going to be. So thank you. You guys did a great job.
Okay. So with that, I will go ahead. We had a motion and a second.
Yes, thank you. I have a motion by Director Torres and a second by Director Rizvi. I'm ready to take the vote.
Absolutely. Call for the vote.
Thank you. Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Dinstedt?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
All right, folks. Finance is having a party tonight. Budget passed. All right, thank you very much. Okay, let's finish off with the rest of our agenda here, folks, as we're getting close to the noon hour here. So moving on to reports, Mr. Miller, no, excuse me, General Counsel, I almost jumped right over you. So sorry, sir.
Good morning, Madam President and board members. I have nothing to report today. Thank you.
Oh, counsel, what a good choice. Okay, Mr. Miller, what would you like to dazzle us with for the rest of the day?
Council's smarter than me. I can't resist.
Oh, jeez.
Personally, I want to thank our staff for their effort on the budget. You guys really did a great job. But I also want to thank the board, because it's very difficult for the board to engage in the budget. We start the budget process literally talking about how many gallons of gas we're going to buy next year. So figuring out what to present to the board for you to consider on a policy level is a challenge. And so we really appreciate the hard work that the board did in, studying for the workshops and asking good questions at the workshops. So, it may appear at the board meeting that we're not going into a great deal of depth. We did that already. And so I appreciate the board's time and effort to do that. So thank you very much. We're happy to get this behind us. Second item, driving in this morning, I was listening on the radio to the DJs, which please don't ever listen to DJs for one bit of information that you rely upon. And they were talking all about the conservation measures that went into effect today. And they had it almost 100% wrong as to what was going on. So today, restrictions are going into effect. This is Metropolitan's restrictions. Now, remember, the radio DJs said if you're a customer Metropolitan, you can only water 1 day a week. You all know Metropolitan has no customers, no retail customers. We are their customers. We're a wholesaler. We then would implement that to our customers. So
But it's not us.
it's not us.
Oh.
No, but
So
it's not us.
if it was us, we would do
I was
that.
like, wait.
This is where you all heard about how the state water dependent agencies at Metropolitan were going to go to 1 day a week watering, or Plan B, a volumetric cutback, which is what most of the agencies will do. They'll do a volumetric cutback. Metropolitan gives them a target. They have to meet that target. They can meet it however they want. So LADWP is doing that by saying 2 day a week watering. And it's odd and even based on your address. And so the radio was trying to explain that. They got that mostly wrong. So the 1 day a week watering, if you're a Met member agency and you're subject to that.
Sarah.
Sarah was not in charge of their communications, clearly,
They
or the media.
need Sarah.
We've tried, and we monitor all those press releases. We try and help Metropolitan with their press releases. They do listen to us sometimes, and so that's good. But it's challenging. We continue with our messaging. Sarah's team is on top of this. We've got a whole schedule of press releases that are going to go all summer long. But you're going to start hearing this a lot, and you're starting to hear Metropolitan's $10.5 million campaign in ads hit the streets now. So they're on the radio, they're on television, you'll hear them, and they're all talking about cutting back. So we still are implementing stage 2, 20% voluntary cutbacks. We will continue to push that really hard. We need our customers to cut back the amount of water they're utilizing. It's going to be a long, dry, hot summer. You know, it's not, I heard the weather forecast that it's going to be dry for the next 7 days, so the drought's going to continue. I don't know where this weather forecaster has been. We all live in Southern California. It's going to be dry until October.
Right.
So we got to get through the summer, and we need our customers to conserve what they're using. And as you know, we're also full court press on a long-term solution with Sacramento. The third thing I want to talk about quickly is we hosted Met Chairwoman Gray for a tour last week. I want to thank our staff that helped out, Frank Saucedo, Alex Garcia, Tom Tabor, Albert Maguillon, and Tim. It was a great effort. Paul, I think Paul the chauffeur. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here, but I heard nothing but good things about it, so really happy we had the opportunity to share what we do with the Metropolitan Chairwoman. And then finally, we have our annual team building event coming up, so the staff is really excited about that, and we are going to do the whole hardwired assessment for all staff members, and the board has been through the hardwired assessment already. So some of our staff has been through it, but we have found it very valuable in communicating internally. And so we're going to provide that service for all
With
staff.
Nate and Mar? With Nate and Mar, that same?
Yes, with
Oh,
Nate.
that's awesome.
Yep. And so we'll all find out what colors we are. And so that's a good thing. So that concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. All right, moving on to director's reports. SAPA.
Next week.
Okay. Met, there is a brief summary in front of you. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about and highlight was the fact that Metropolitan is doing a state tour for the directors only for Met, so we can get some of the new folks out. So I will be going on that tour here up to Sacramento and staying up there for a couple of days and hopefully getting to see some of the inside baseball going on. So I'm really looking forward to that. And there's going to be some talks too about when we're starting up the tours and when I have the opportunity to bring people forward. So we'll be working with Michael Hadley on that to try to get some lists turned out, and hopefully he can dust off the lists of past attendees so that we can look at some folks that we might want to include on that trip. And of course, if you guys have suggestions of people that you'd like, community leaders and activists and things that we have out in the area in our service territory for consideration on those trips, because those are very coveted spots. certainly present that over to Mr. Miller, and we'll start creating a list. Hopefully, that will be able something that we can generate and turn out here in the near future. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, Chino Basin.
Watermaster met last week. They adopted their fiscal 22-23 budget. It is just shy of $9.5 million. Their process was not quite as smooth as ours.
Oh, geez, how did I know? Okay, CDA.
No, tomorrow.
Okay. RICRA.
We had a meeting last week. We appointed an audit firm for the fiscal years of 22 to 24, Clifton Larson Allen. And we also had an approval of consulting service contract with DePuja and Wells Consulting for the development and implementation of a policy framework for authorities' recycled water program in the amount of $95,000. This is the while that it's going to provide, it is very important that we have some framework, and we are excited as the agency to get this moving forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. WRCOG, we meet next week, and just as a reminder, General Assembly is at the end of the month, so we'll be talking to you folks to see who's going to be in attendance for General Assembly. And again, the speaker, the keynote speaker, is Mr. Steve Wozniak, who is a co-founder of Apple with Steve Jobs. So, June 23rd.
23rd.
Yeah, June 20.
You are all registered?
I don't know. How are the centerpieces coming? Because yes, we'd like an update on the centerpieces because we're sponsoring the centerpieces along with Eastern, correct?
Correct, Madam President. I'm happy to report that we have confirmed centerpieces in coordination with Eastern Municipal Water District, and those will be representing both our districts well, along with some drought messaging that you'll see included in the centerpiece. They do have pretty full tables, so we're a little bit limited in terms of what we can offer as takeaways, but we'll be well represented there, and staff will also be on hand to make sure we're connecting with our stakeholders at that event.
Fantastic. And I was also asked yesterday by the executive director for WRCOG, Mr. Wilson, who would like us to do a video spot in conjunction with Eastern to talk about the innovation that we have in water. And so I just asked him if he could do some follow-up with you folks and give us a time slot. Are we talking about 30 seconds? Are we talking about 5 minutes? I mean, there's a heck of a difference. So I'm sure you guys have some stuff already produced that could turn out easily, and I would love to see if we had an opportunity to put a drought message up there, because that would be an awesome thing for us to talk about while we had a room full of attendees at the General Assembly. So just comments, and hey, might as well take advantage of the crowd we have in place. So, but that's all I have for that. Sarah.
Next week, but that meeting has been canceled, so we're going to meet somewhere in August.
Okay. All right. Aqua, anybody have any comments for Aqua? Anything going on with JPIA or, okay. The Region 9 program is the day after General Assembly, so it's going to be that Friday. So I'm sure we have information that's being pushed out by Board Secretary on that information, so keep your eyes posted on that. There's supposed to be a nice program, and it's going to be down at Wilson Creek. So it'll be right down there next to where General Assembly is. Okay, director's comments. I will start. Director Rizvi, any comments today?
No comments, just thank you to staff. It's been, all of the work on the budget has been great, so thank you.
Okay, Director Outen?
Just really briefly, yes, thank you on the budget item. That was, as I mentioned before, pretty painless, I think, for all of us up here, so thank you. And I did get to witness the Chino Basin Water Master budget discussion. And you're right, Mike, it was very different from how ours went. I just wanted to mention something. I like to share if I've gone somewhere that I see something that might be a good idea for us to think about in the future. So I was down at Huntington Beach, and they have I'm going to call it the luxury of having every Tuesday evening street fair where they close I think it's 3 blocks on Main Street. And so we've been down there from time to time, and this not 2 days ago, but a week ago, Tuesday, it was Public Works Week. And the city of Huntington Beach had taken a whole so it goes up Main Street, and then it spreads just a little bit out from Main Street. They had taken one whole path, I don't know what you want to call it, and they had their equipment, and they had booths, and they had there were kids like climbing on stuff, and they had some information about their water and where their water comes from. I picked up a couple of handouts, and so I know we don't have that per se, that avenue of a weekly, place that's conducive to that. But if you take that concept, and then I've also seen, it's called Touch a Truck. I haven't seen this since before COVID, but it's an event that goes around and, like, say a city holds it, and they would have city equipment there, they would have the water district's equipment there, and that kind of thing. So just a thought that I know we've talked about maybe doing a fall open house at some point.
We have done an open house, and the one we did prior to COVID actually had all of our trucks
That
and
would-
equipment out here.
It would be
And we
awesome.
had all kinds of different things that the kids could play on, and engineering staff was having a ball, setting some of this stuff up, and we had other organizations come in with their equipment as well to fill it out. So yes, would love to get back on track with all that.
It seemed like a really big success, so not to cause any more work for anybody, but if it ever fits into a schedule.
That was
It was a
right
lot of
before
fun.
the pandemic. It was beautiful.
No, we had a nice time, and it was a nice turnout, and our parking lot worked really well for it, but ideally, that's something, once we get the demonstration garden down, we'd love to partner with March and do that as a huge day, because I think it would be a huge draw. Yes.
As long as
We
they
have
don't-
big plans.
As long as they don't climb on the planes.
Right, no plane climbing. No. We'll have
Anyway,
legal counsel draw up documents for that.
Yeah.
The liability
Sign
stuff.
your life away.
Yeah. Okay,
So that was it. Thank you.
all right, thank you. Director Gardner.
Happy June.
Thank you. Director Torres.
All I have is a happy Pride Month for those staff and people in the public listening who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I see you, and we love you.
Okay, thank you. And I did want to give a brief shout out to staff for when Gloria Gray, the chairwoman for Metropolitan, came out here. I got some really wonderful feedback from her. She was really impressed with our organization. She was really excited about our staff. And she wanted to know what it would take to come and be a staff member here at Western. So, because she thinks this is a place to where it's happening and everybody's happy being here. Because I said, we're not just a place to work. This is home. So kudos to you guys on conveying that message forward to her. She just really had a good time. I also wanted to circle back to and talk about, with what Craig just talked about, Mr. Miller just talked about with his leadership stuff. So we're looking forward to the board having its next session too, and hopefully we've got that schedule coming up here in the near future. We're trying to get that squared away and get contracts situated and get all that so we can continue on with what we have been striving for as the leaders in the top of the organization. So I appreciate my colleagues' time and patience as we try to continue to set those things up, because I know it's been kind of crazy and a little bit busy. So that came from one of the workshops for the budget and a request from Director Gardner when Tim cited some things out of it in the presentation, and so we were all provided with a copy of that.
You don't have to read it. I was just proving that I followed the advice of Rod and I actually read it.
right?
You
So
asked,
I got
you asked the
homework
question,
assignment.
and now you got homework.
there it is. So we were
I'm
all
gonna
given,
put any book in front of us and we wouldn't know the difference.
so we were all given a copy of that in relation to the question that was asked at the budget and how this all came about. So happy reading. Okay. And with that, I think that's all I have for right now. Any future requests for future agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Informational items are on the agenda to peruse at your leisure. We do have a closed session. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And
Brief, but we do have one.
And I see Brad Neufeld is here for that closed session, so you're cut loose. Great, off the clock. All right. So at this time, we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break, folks, if you need, and we'll meet in the closed session room. Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. We are returning from closed session. At this time, we'll go ahead and ask the board secretary for a roll call, please, of the board members who are present.
Thank you. Director Roten?
Here.
Director Rizvi? Here. Director Gardner?
Present.
Director Torres?
Yes.
President Dinstedt?
I am present, thank you.
Thank you, President Dinstedt. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Council, if you could go ahead and give us a report out of closed session, please.
Yes, Madam President. There's no reportable action from today's closed session.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Miller, do we have anything outstanding left on our agenda for today?
No, we are complete.
Okay.
Madam President,
Oh, that's
before
correct.
we adjourn.
Yes, I forgot. Jeez, I got to circle back
Let's-
with Happy June.
That's because I forgot. I would like to seek the guidance of the board on the ad hoc committee for updating our code. A substantial amount of work has been done. We've got some things that are completed from the committee perspective. The guidance I'm seeking from the board is twofold. One, there are a number of things, some of which are completed at the committee level and some of which are very close to being completed at the committee level, that address things related to elections and fundraising and those sorts of things. With 4 seats up for election this November, I'm curious whether the board would like to try to address those issues.
Okay, let me put you, because I don't want to get too far on this because that's not on the agenda, so I don't want to do too much. Why don't we just put it as a placeholder for a discussion item for our next agenda, unless I'm hearing heartburn from everybody, so that you can get whatever it is and ask for the direction?
Let me switch this to a request for a future agenda item.
Yes.
To give direction.
Yes, I think that would be appropriate for us to plug into our next agenda, and then you guys can discuss where you're at on the process and what you'd like to do going into the future. So we'll just leave it at that, because I don't want to move too far, because we don't have legal counsel here to advise anymore. Oh, no, he's off the clock. We kicked him loose because I didn't think we were going to do anything other than adjourn. So if we're all comfortable with that.
That works.
Then let's just put that on the next go-round for discussion, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Seeing nothing else further before us today, we'll go ahead and call the meeting adjourned. See you back here for June 15th at our regularly scheduled time. Thank you very much today.